All right. Hi, everyone. It's Robert from Overtime Heroics here with Jude. We are talking about One Championship Inside the Matrix number 2. And this is, I think, episode number 3 of the Overtime Heroics podcast. So, yeah, Jude, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay, Rob.
Good to
How are
hear.
you?
Yeah, pretty well. I mean, yeah, pretty excited to talk about the card. It was a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's crack on with it, I guess. Just from the offset, this was really, like, in terms of actual fight time, really quick.
yeah. This card was pretty quick. There had I think five fights, right?
5 fights, but the first
Five
three of
fights
them, first
were
round
first.
yeah,
Yeah,
first round
this
finishes. One of them, I think the first one was under a minute.
first. Yeah, under a minute, and those three finishes were happened in the first round. So, um, uh, compared to the previous cards, this one's really the quickest, I think.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see where it ranks in One Championship cards overall in terms if they actually count the fight time ever. I reckon
Yeah,
it's one of the shortest they've had.
yeah, I think so too.
Especially with, now that they are in Singapore and they are focusing more on MMA versus, there's none of the longer Muay Thai fights. The only 5 rounders are the main events.
Main events, but I think um I'm not sure, but the Inside the Matrix 4 will be its main event will be a kickboxing match. So
Oh,
I think
really?
will be I'm not sure, but at the end of the Inside the Matrix 2, they revealed their future cards. And it was really surprising because I thought that Inside the Matrix 3 would end at number 3, but they had it number 4 and they featured it. It was a kickboxing match, I think, if I can remember. Yeah.
I didn't.
So
I'm not
so
gonna lie.
assuming that
I'm not gonna lie. I only watched the fights themselves, so I didn't actually see that announcement at the end. I probably should have given it a look.
Uh, so, so assuming that the main event is a kickboxing match, then the undercards will I think be Muay Thai or kickboxing too.
Hmm.
Especially in the Inside the Matrix 2, a Muay Thai fight with the Rocky Ogden was cancelled. So I think they'll be transferring it to the Inside the Matrix 4.
Nice. And do you remember who the main event for number 4 will be?
I don't remember, man.
We'll look it up.
I'm not familiar with those names.
That's all right. We'll
Uh,
do a we'll do a catch up of it closer to it, and we'll review the card then. The other thing I kind of noticed on this card: do you think the announcer is inspired by the Pride announcer? They sound so similar.
they sound so similar. I think Michael Chavallo is the Pride announcer before. I'm not
Hmm.
really sure, but basing on the voice, I'm confident it's him. He's done. He was commentator in different promotions before one.
Hmm.
I
Oh
haven't really.
no, I mean, when they're coming out, they're walking down and they do the announcement to the crowd.
Oh, I'm not sure. I haven't seen Pride
No,
before.
fair enough. I
Um,
think it sounds so similar, and the way that they've got it with Have you ever watched a Polaris card?
nope. No,
No,
so.
Polaris have got the definitely got the Pride woman for it, and it just
Oh,
sounds.
Polaris. Yeah, I've seen fights, but not really the entrances, the walkouts.
Hmm. Well, I'd be interested to see if it is related in any way. But all right, let's crack on with this card, I guess. Um, right, so the first match. Okay, little more than a minute. Not a huge amount to talk about. I mean,
Yeah,
1 minute 26 seconds, just quick.
yeah, that was quick. Um, Bangbo. Personally, I expected her to finish quick.
Hmm.
Um, she has really good boxing and she's so offensive and has power. And that's the thing with these fights. Her opponent, Priscilla, her Tati Lumbangaul, there's so little tape about her fights, so there's little to study about her. So
She struck me as quite flustered in the fight. I mean, she was backing up from the get go. I mean, straight away she's backed up right on the edge of the cage. She was throwing out those side kicks, and Meng Bo just didn't care.
Priscilla's specialty is wushu, so
Mm-hmm.
they're really good at that side kicks, those mainly kicks. So yeah, one thing I noticed about was that Mengbo was already anticipating it. From the moment that Priscilla had thrown side kicks, Mengbo was like kind of setting up her right hand. She was cutting the ring well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
she was cutting it well. She she actually had thrown those right hands, and it was until that she cut off and put Priscilla's back on her cage that she landed that big right. Um,
Yeah, you know what? I mean, especially down at atomweight in the women's divisions, you don't often get finishes with hands. I've noticed it's not often a punch knockout. I mean, the fact that Mengbo managed that, that's really impressive.
Even Angela Lee, the champion, doesn't really have that one punch knockout.
Right? I mean, yeah. I mean, it's who else would have that kind of power? Like Jingzhen Nan,
Uh,
I think you pronounce it, in the division above, but not really
but
one punch.
but when Zhang moved down to the atomweight division, she hadn't got that power when she fought
Mm,
Angela Lee, right?
yeah, that's
Angela
true.
was able to take those punches well.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, off the offset, she might be one of the most powerful girls in the division by that means. That could be fun. I'd be interested to see who she fights next.
I think after this win, what's next for her? She'll surely be in the women's atomweight Grand Prix. She'll be
Hmm.
participating in that. I think that'll be early on next year. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
I'm thinking she's with along the top 5 contenders. Uh, yeah. But I'm not sure if it's a 8 women or 4 kind of Grand Prix, but she'll surely be included in those.
I mean, if there's an 8 women one, of course, has to be in it. If there's a four, I mean, yeah, still probably. Um,
No problem.
so that'd be interesting to see her tested against a few different people because I believe that was only her second fight in one.
Yeah, second fight in one and second straight first round knockout.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I researched about her and I was so surprised because, um, in her debut fight in MMA, she was she beat she was she's the only one to beat UFC's current champion Zhang Weili.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
in her first fight, and it was also Weili's debut fight. They fought each other.
Mm.
Who was able to win. So that alone is surprising enough.
Do you know how long ago that was?
I think it's, if I remember it right, it's 2014. No,
It's just, yeah, they're way into their career in that case. I mean, a lot has happened. Um, but yeah, I mean, Zhang Wei Li, she's one of those few girls who carries that power as well. Mm. So, I mean, like I said, short fight. Maybe best to move on to the next one. Ikaroni Saputra versus Ramon Gonzalez. Another first round finish.
Ramon Gonzalez.
Yeah, I mean, Saputra, honestly, I think he's one of my favorite guys in one at the moment.
Um, I can also say that, especially when he got that. He actually fought last
Hmm.
October, so it was just 1 month, and he got back in the ring. And last October, he fought Silveraju and got that very rare submission. Uh, the one commentator even called that it's his original submission, the eco lock.
I like that. Yeah, what
It
was it? It
was
was Americana with
it
his
was
legs, right?
Americana with his legs. Yeah, he
Yeah.
set up the Americana with his legs.
That was creative, and that means that's the let me see. That's the fourth first round finish in a row, and the third time he's submitted people in a row. Uh, uh,
Yeah,
I think he's great. I mean,
he's
he
great.
he kind of shot the takedowns quite exposed in this one. Like he went from very
Yeah,
far out
that
to flying in.
that's what I also noticed.
He didn't set them up a whole lot, but that's not like a recurring problem. The past two, he's set them up really nicely with punches. So I'm not sure what the difference here was. But yeah, I mean, he punches well into takedowns normally. He's really smothering with top pressure. He's really good at getting the submission. I'm excited to see how he does. And I mean, I don't think he's ranked. Well, maybe he's ranked now. I haven't checked
He's, uh, One championship only ranks their guys on top five. I
oh,
think it's
really?
because they don't have that much fighters. So in their website, they only rank up to top five only, and
Mm.
Ikoron is not that list yet.
Hey,
But
I mean, if the division's quite shallow, I reckon he's this close to getting ranked.
yeah, I think so. Ikoron is in national champion in wrestling in their country. So it's obviously that he's been training wrestling since he was a kid. So that um he showed that he's got a lot to improve in the stand up game, but um he's there. I think he's a gifted striker. Um, Most of the wrestlers you see doesn't have that stance that um what do you call that, the just when you see it you can say that, oh, he can punch, right?
Yeah,
um
yeah,
like Ben Askren, Ben Askren, great wrestler, but doesn't um uh on the stance he doesn't even have it. Iko Ronnie has the potential.
he goes he's quite bladed and quite wide. Almost there's almost something a bit Henry Cejudo about him. It's almost
Yeah,
like a karate kind of stance, I think. And I can't place my finger on it, but that seems to work so well for wrestlers to have that big bladed stance and like jumping in and out like that. Honestly, I just can't really foresee how the skills match up, but it does so well. And yeah, the punches were a little shaky in this fight, but in his last month, he was all over his opponent. I mean, that was really impressive, the way he was punching there. Got him covering up, got him bent over, and then when the guy couldn't even see him, shot that takedown in. And people very rarely get up after he takes him down.
yeah, that's what's happened to Ramon Gonzalez. Once Iko Ronnie got a hold of him, that's pretty much over.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
from there, he got chain wrestling and all. He got into pass as well. No, he got into position,
hmm
uh, landed ground and pound, and ultimately made Ramon make mistakes that led to the submission.
Yeah, I mean, the ground and pound thing though, he's not really one to focus on it. It's not like a Habib style where it's, fold them down, break the posture, and ground and pound. Uh, Icaroni kind of uses ground and pound more of he smothers. It's
Yeah,
very much a wrestling attack, and he just uses those strikes to get people to, I don't know, move their elbows up and advance his position in that way. It's kind of a different, it's quite a limited ground and pound style, but I quite like it. It's really efficient.
yeah. I also like that when wrestlers don't like uh, give their ground and pound directly. Um, they use it for distractions so that
Hmm.
their opponent will cover up and they um, they can pass or they can improve their positions. That's great for Ikoroni. That's one of his strengths, because also he has an excellent jiu-jitsu, obviously. So most of wrestlers doesn't have good jiu-jitsu, but he's special.
Yeah, I would really like to see him against more of a grappling specialist next. I think that could be really
Yeah,
interesting because Raymond Gonzalez listed as a karateka.
karate.
Um, and there wasn't a lot there because I think he kind of got a bit troubled with looking out and defending the takedowns. He didn't have a chance to really put his striking skills on show. But if you were to put Icaroni against someone who's quite a lot more defensively sound, much more of a grappler, or maybe a really good jiu-jitsu, it would be interesting to see how he has to adapt. And I think that would force him to be in the striking range a bit more, because either he wouldn't be able to take them down, or it would be more of a danger to take them down, and maybe he would kind of shy away from it. And it would be interesting to see him on the feet for a little longer and to see what he can do.
Yeah. One championship posted on their social media, like who is next for these winners.
Mm-hmm.
I commented it down below that I wanted to see Ikoroni fight Hexigetu, the Chinese man who fought last month. He beat Dejmarong, the Muay Thai legend in Thailand.
Mm.
Hexigetu was also good in the ground as well as on the feet. So it's really a great fight to a fight wherein they'll I think go up in the rankings. So for now, Iko Ronnie has to fight lower rank of I don't lower ranked or middle ranked opponents, so he can move up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is though, if the divisions are that small where they can only rank the top five, he only needs to fight a couple before he can move into that
Yeah,
numbered area.
from bantamweight below, I think they got 20 plus fighters. When you look up in the uh, Wikipedia list, they've got a couple, but it's in those bigger and heavier weights that they just got a few. That's why in their site, they don't even put the rankings on middleweight and up because they've got so few. They didn't even
Yeah,
reach them, I think.
yeah. Well, I guess it's partly to do with them taking a lot of the talent out of well, mostly Southeast Asia, right? Southeast and Eastern Asia, where people are a bit smaller over there. So it's not surprising, especially since that even in divisions with like the UFC and Cage Warriors, lightweight and featherweight are the heaviest, well, not the heaviest, the deepest divisions anyway. I mean, right now,
Uh,
lightweight in the UFC is so stacked.
yeah.
Heavier divisions are pretty thin on numbers, even over here. So in an area where people aren't so big in general, it's not surprising that those divisions are really thin.
Yeah. That's why in one championship, the most stacked division is the flyweight and bantamweight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like just a little bit down from the more European and American heavy organizations. Just like just one unit shifted.
Yeah.
And then
So yeah,
after that,
Gonzalez versus Coroni was that classic striker versus grappler,
mm-hmm.
and in this time the grappler wins.
Yeah, honestly though, when people are a little less experienced, when it's not that really, really high level, and I don't mean those top guys in one are going to be getting to the top level, but in general, one is a slightly lower level than maybe the UFC. The lower levels, grapplers do tend to win against the strikers because unless you're able to keep that distance really well, unless you've got brilliant distance control, you always end up in a clinch. You always end up on the ground, and if you can't get back up, you're going to really struggle from there.
Those low level strikers can't even deal with the pressure of the grapplers.
Hmm.
They stand up. Um, Most of those fights, the striker end up backing up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're afraid of the takedown. They need to keep that distance, and if your only way to keep distance is backing up, there's a cage wall. You're going to hit it. I'd be interested to see with one championship though, because one is a little light on wrestlers as well. There are plenty of strikers, but wrestlers are quite few and far between. I would be interesting to see who the first proper wrestler that Ikaroni ends up against, who that might be.
I don't think I I'm not sure. I don't know of any name in the division that is a proper wrestler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's the only one I could name, like a Malaysian champion, right?
Uh, kwa- um. Uh. Indonesia.
Indonesian champion. Well, national champion nonetheless, in whatever way. He's clearly been training it for, like you said, since he was a kid.
Yeah.
I guess that's maybe we move on to. Got to have a look at these
Kim
names because
Kim.
last time I
Kim
did the
Kim.
podcast, I couldn't say. I had to keep looking up the names, and I just felt so embarrassed because it must have been disrespectful that I couldn't name them.
Um.
Yuya
That's
Wakamatsu versus Kim Kyu Sung.
yeah. Yuya Wakamatsu versus Kim Kyo-sung.
Another first round
And
finish.
their first round finished very quick. Um.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I thought Wakamatsu looked amazing. I mean, personally, though Ikaroni, one of my favorite fighters at the moment, I thought this was possibly, like, probably the performance of the night.
Yeah. Um. Um. Before the fight happened, it was actually my first time hearing about Kim Kyo-sung.
Mm-hmm.
Um. I'm not so familiar with him, but I was during the walkouts or the face-offs. I was heavily favoring him to win because he's just so big. He's so huge. When they sized up,
Was it
Yuya
like a?
Wakamatsu just so small.
It's like a 10 centimeter height difference. I think they were saying.
Advantage 11. You think 11? And that's pretty huge.
That's enormous. But I mean, I think it played. It showed really clearly in the way that Wakamatsu approached the fight, though, because it was all about like bouncing in and out, keeping coming in and out of range. He maintained that perfectly, and it was. I know that it was a right cross that finished the fight, or yeah, essentially finished the fight. But it was those left hooks that were really setting it up and that were really hitting home all the way up to it. It was all about him coming in close, landing those really short range punches, and coming back out again. And I
Yeah,
think what really won Wakamatsu the fight were three things. I mean, well, mainly his footwork and the fact that he had that brilliant in-out movement. And whenever Sung pressured him and got him up against the cage, that brilliant lateral movement, he just couldn't get pinned down. Whereas in the first match with Meng Bo, she was really able to pin Girl against the cage. There was no way to pin him. He was always pivoting off, and I thought that was
yeah,
perfect. And I found that, I mean, I don't know if you'd agree, but what I think the trouble was that Sung struggled to hit him, got quite frustrated, then he was defending shots, and then I think he just went for it. I think he got quite frustrated that he couldn't strike Wakamatsu and just went for it at a terrible time, and Wakamatsu just so much quicker, and it just hit home before Sung's punches could even get close.
yeah, I agree. Yuya Wakamatsu was excellent in finding angles for his shots. Even though Kim Kyo-sung has the reach advantage, he was able to slip those jabs and, as you said, land those left hooks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yuya Wakamatsu is a gifted striker. He actually fought Dimitrios Johnson before, and he did well on the stand up, and he just got submitted. But um, he's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was really cool, and I thought that I think he just had Sung's number. I mean, I'd be interested. I'm interested to see more from him. I've not seen him fight before. That was the first time I'd seen his fights, and it was perfect. It was just an excellent performance. He's got a lot of power for someone his size. I think he got hit with one good punch. Probably there was one stiff jab that he got hit with,
Yeah, one stiff jab.
and nothing else. Just nothing else.
Um, I think the problem for Kim Kyo-sung in this match was that he was so slow with his punches. Um, when he jabs, he comes forward and um, he doesn't get his hand back in time to defend himself,
Mm-hmm.
and he he overextends in his jabs. And after on the end of those jabs, Yuya Wakamatsu has already gotten to another angle. So I think Yuya had read that well, he anticipated that it was actually coming off from a jab or an entry by Kim Kyu-sung that he got caught by that right straight.
Yeah. See, this is what I think. This is what I mean. I mean, I think he just got frustrated and overreached to try and hit Wakamatsu, and he just overreached. Didn't have the defense in there. It wasn't the right time or position. Just got dropped.
He didn't even use kicks.
I think
He
he
had
used a
longer legs. He didn't
couple.
use,
Didn't he try to use a couple, and they just
yeah,
didn't.
no kicks. No kicks.
But they didn't get
Uh,
anywhere either. They were too
there
slow
was
as well. They were a little overreached, and they just didn't get there.
um the surprising thing is that Kim Kyu-sung was coming into this fight uh having never been KO'd before. Yeah, so
Hmm.
this was the first match that he got knocked out, and Yu Matsu was able to do that.
Well, it's always interesting to see what that does to a fighter. You know, when there's, say, an undefeated fighter, they always have a lot more confidence in when they come in. Um, when you get knocked out for the first time or when you get defeated for the first time, I feel like it can really shake someone's confidence, or it means that they double down on how well they train. It's kind of it's kind of the difference between, say, Francis Ngannou, who, when he got defeated the first time, next time he came back against Derek Lewis,
Yeah, Derek
just
Lewis
not a good show. Or the difference between that and like Brian Ortega, gets beaten by Max Holloway, comes back better
was
than
back better.
ever. Yeah.
That was surprising.
Yeah, so it'd be really interesting to see what Kim Kyu-sun comes back like in the next match.
Yeah, we'll see. He's an exciting fighter to watch.
Mm-hmm.
With his very big frame, he could possibly destroy those contenders if he's on the right frame of mind and proper training, proper preparation. He just lacked something in that fight. Yuya Wakamatsu was just levels above him.
Yeah, he's kind of shown him up, but it happens. There are going to be people better than you that skills match up with really badly, and I'm not writing Kim Kyu-sung off at all. I'd just like to see what happens next. It just in that match, just wasn't quite there. And then I guess that takes us on to Timothy Nastyukhin versus Peter Bust, the only
Yeah,
fight that didn't end with a stoppage.
this is the match that I've been wanting to talk about.
All
Peter
right.
Booth was no disrespect, but he he seemed kind of off in that fight.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not really sure exactly what it was, if it was game planning or something else. But uh, you know, if it is the commentators were saying that, oh, it looks like this is what he wants to happen. He coasted the first two rounds, and then he did come out in the third round really fresh and did. If you're scoring it round by round, he definitely won the third. But it was
Yeah,
too little, too late, and it was quite frankly just a really bad game plan.
yeah. Whatever he planned, if he planned to gas out Nastyukhin in the later rounds, it did not work.
I
Um,
think,
Timofey was still he, the commentator said it. He was breathing hard, but his movements, he's still snappy and quick on his feet on the third round. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, he wasn't as quick in the third round. He didn't do nearly as much damage, and Peter Bust did land more hits, but you can't leave it. So I don't. I'm still a little confused by one scoring about if it is round by round or if it's the fight as a whole. If it's the fight as a whole, you can't leave it 10 minutes and then be like, oh, now I'm going to try and win. You because you have to do twice as much work in those last 5 minutes than the other guy's done in the 10 before. It was just
yeah.
too little too late.
He was he was he was on it. He got his momentum on third round. but I think Timofey just produced more, was the more active one. Um, he landed more, he threw more. He even is the one who initiates the contacts. And Peter Buist was just, for a kickboxer, he was just standing right in front of Timofey.
Right.
He was right.
There was no lateral movement. He just backed up and then stood on the cage. I was just like,
Yeah.
I,
I was also surprised by that because he has the reach. He has the reach advantage, the length advantage on the feet, but no lateral movement. For me, he could have thrown deep kicks, front kicks,
yeah.
because
And he did in the third round. This is what frustrates me so much, that if he'd fought in the
yeah,
third round, if he fought in the first round like he did in the third, it would have been a completely different fight. But not only did he let Nastyukhin run away with the first two rounds, but when it came to the third, when he did start having success, Nastyukhin just went, well, I'll take it down.
yeah,
And Buse had no answer to it. When it hit the floor, Nastyukhin controlled him really well, let him up at one point, which I thought was a terrible choice from Nastyukhin, but at that point there was 1 minute left.
yeah. This fight is a title eliminator. Uh, Nastyukhin just showed more urgency. He showed up to be the hungrier fighter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's it. You know what, actually, I'd like to talk about the first two rounds a little bit after this, but yeah, the reason Nastyukhin won is that, yeah, he just he just had more activity, and I don't even, that's the thing, I don't even know if he's a better fighter than Peter Boost. Like, he might be, because he was clearly better on the ground, and maybe they are equal striking. I just don't know how good, from that fight I wouldn't know how good Peter Boost is on the feet.
yeah.
That's what frustrates me.
Especially if that's the first time you've seen Peter Buist,
Hmm.
then you won't judge anything about his striking abilities. He's a national champion, great kickboxer, but in that fight, Timofey just owned him on the feet.
Yeah, you know what though? I think Timothy did actually have a good game plan, and this is why I wanted to talk about the first two rounds, because the first two rounds were actually where Timothy did most of the work. In the third round, he was quite tired. You know, he was still working, but he was clearly more tired. But the way that he, you know, whenever Peter was offensive and was throwing kicks, the way that Timothy caught them, ran him back, and started frustrating him. Like, every time Peter would throw a kick, Timothy would make it worse for him. It would make him wish he'd never done it. You know, he'd run him back onto the fence. He would land a strike. I think at the end of the first, he manages to get a takedown off of it, which was one of the most dangerous points of the fight for Peter. Um, I thought that was excellent. I thought that was great. And it's almost a bit undercut, because I don't know how much of an effect that had on the fight. Because again, Peter didn't do enough.
Yeah. Um, one thing I noticed about Timofey was that he was so focused and accurate on his counters. Um, those takedowns actually came from Timofey catching Peter's kicks. Yeah, whenever Peter throws a roundhouse kick, he would
Mm-hmm.
catch it, and throw his overhand, and that would knock down or take down Peter.
Yeah, and I thought it was good, because it meant that whenever Peter did anything, it was kind of like conditioning him to not to do anything later. An old coach of mine sort of said this as a tactic. He would say, if someone comes along and throws a bit of rubbish on your lawn, go over and burn down their porch, and they'll never throw rubbish on your lawn again. And all he was saying was that if someone does something you don't like, if someone jabs you in the face, what you need to do is counter it with something that makes them never want to jab you in the face again. And slowly you start chipping away at the stuff they can do until they're left with nothing. And I thought that was kind of what Timofey was doing. Every time
Yeah,
Peter would kick, it would make him regret it.
yeah, I think so. I agree. Maybe Peter did hesitate to throw those kicks more because of um him having been taken down by Timothy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, aside from kicking, Peter didn't also throw much punches.
Yeah,
That's because that's because of the scary power of Nastukin. He
yeah,
really packs the punches.
yeah. I mean, that was that is a good point, but I kind of wonder how much that was him afraid of Nastukin's power, and how much of it was the bad game planning.
Yeah, I I think both of it. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
he
to Peter's
respected he respected Nastukin too much to the point that he was right scared to throw or scared to exchange. But he go ahead.
yeah, well, look, that's like the core of that tactic. Make them not want to do anything, and you'll win the fight through just by them being inactive.
Another thing also, if if it was true that Peter game plan was to tire and gas out Timofey, I'm not really a fan of those tactics because you won't know of if your opponent will gas out. Timofey, I think, really prepared his cardio. I think he anticipated it that that will be Peter's game plan. So Peter didn't have that. His game plan didn't um come out good.
Well, what I would say is that I think those game plans work, but they only work under. They don't work in the way that Peter did it. Those game plans work either where you have someone who's notorious for running out of energy, or where you're able to push the pace so much that they have to use all the energy. You can't just sit back and let them work. You have to make them work. And so I think the two ways that works are with, say, Habib versus anyone. It's about getting on top of them and dragging them down. And I think actually for Habib, it helped. I don't know what to say now that he's retired. You know, whenever people would get up, he would return them to the mat, and it meant that they were carrying his weight. You know, they're clawing their way up, dragged back down again, and it's exhausting. And that's why in most of Habib's fights, the submissions would come later on, because it wouldn't be about submitting them instantly, not like a pure jiu-jitsu. It would be about wearing them out until there's just nothing they can do, and then he cranks on their neck and they have to tap out. That's one way that tactic works, by just imposing yourself on them. The other way that can work is, say, Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero, because Romero is super explosive and loves to be really active, but he likes to take rests, right? So what Whittaker did is every time Romero wanted to take a rest, he would throw out low energy techniques, jabs, things like that, especially in their first fight. And it meant that by the end, Romero was so tired that he didn't throw a single punch in the final round. In neither of those scenarios, Habib's or Whittaker's, did they just sit back and wait for their opponent to get tired, because it doesn't work.
Yeah. Um, in that fight, especially in the first or second, when Timofey goes into bursts of strikes, um, I don't. Peter just stands still. There were actually a lot of dead airs where they were just staring at each other, not throwing jabs or punch kicks.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was Peter could have done more. I'm sure after the fight, that's one thing that he realized. Uh, he could have
Yeah,
thrown more.
I think the trouble is that, I mean, to Peter's credit, he didn't take a lot of damage. And actually, if you were to look at both of their faces after the fight, Nastyukhin was actually the guy who looked a bit more like he'd taken more strikes. But that's not enough. And to Peter's credit, he did defend most of the hits. But he only did it by standing still and letting Timofey like unload on him. And that's all well and good if you do that, like, for half a round, but not for two. And that tactic may even have worked if that was a 5-round fight.
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
what I,
oh,
that's
sorry.
what I'm about to say. This was just a 3-round fight, so especially on the one's style of scoring the rounds, it's scored overall. So if you can't build up on the first or second round, then you're probably going to lose the third, or lose the game. If you Yeah,
Yeah. And I think if it was a 5-round fight and Peter turned it on at the right time, if there were another 2 rounds to go, because at that point he was doing more work and he was landing more hits, another 2 rounds, obviously then the balance completely tips in his favor. But with a 3-round fight, you can't coast for that long. And also, if he was looking for the finish, I feel like he didn't, even in the final
yeah,
round where he showed some urgency, he just didn't show enough urgency. If he's looking for the finish, he should have
yeah.
gone for it.
He didn't, man. Um, and also regarding his game plan, if it was really his game plan, uh, it's just a 3-round fight. Timofey had 3-round fights before. He had unanimous decision wins over his past opponents. So he's a guy I think who can survive past 3 rounds.
Yeah, there's nothing to suggest that he's the guy who's going to tire out. Not from what we've seen. Cool. Well, I think that rounds off that fight. Also, just to say, Timofey Nastyukhin, one of the coolest names in one championship. Like, just, I don't know why it is, just sounds really cool. But moving on from that one, main event, welterweight world championship. Kimiran Abasov versus James
Yeah,
Nakashima. Um,
James.
what a comeback! I
Yeah,
mean, I thought James had run away with it. I thought, I thought it was a really competitive start. It was very back and forth. They both looked really relaxed. Cameron threw him around a little bit in the first round. I thought it was going to be very much his side, but James battered his nose, crushed it, and I think it. As soon as that happened, there were a few back and forths. There was the first bit where James was on the front foot and Abasov was on the back. Abasov turned it up in the first round, and suddenly James is on the back foot, but manages to land that cross. And after that point, it all started tipping in James's favor. He started running away with it. And a brilliant takedown defense. But in this case, James did push the pace fast enough. And clearly, Abasov did start getting tired. And despite his really good takedown defense, eventually it went to the ground. And it was very clear on the ground that James on top was clearly the more proficient fighter. And, James was winning that. He was winning that fight. And just the fact that Abasov managed to, I don't know what it was. I think James, let me see, because he was dipping his head the right way.
yeah.
I mean,
I think he's attempting a takedown, and uh, Abasov just catch him with a knee.
yeah, but you know what I found odd is that most of James's takedowns had been single legs with the head on the outside, much safer versus knees and kicks. Because obviously, in an open stance, southpaw versus orthodox, if I'm ducking this way, your power leg
Yeah,
is over here. It's not going to be able to hit me. But he went the wrong way. I'm not sure why. I'd have to rewatch it again. I tried watching it a couple of times to work out what the difference was. But he came this way, and it was just such a good hit.
yeah. Um, I was personally rooting for James Nakashima to win.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He did well. He, during those clinches, he was able to manage to get some sneaky punches. Uh, yeah, but during the start of the fight, Abasov was actually throwing uppercuts
Mm-hmm.
that actually landed and hurt Nakashima a bit. And
Yeah.
it was just a matter of time where he timed it perfectly for a knockout.
Yeah, I mean, in the first match. Oh, sorry, in the first match, in the first round. Yeah, at the start of the fight, sure, but he didn't really throw all that much. Later on, he was throwing less and less volume, and that was still round 4. There was still another round to go, and he was still throwing less and less volume as time went on. That's why I thought James was really running away with it, because there wasn't really much coming. Sorry, say that again.
Abasov was also really showing that he's gotten tired. He's slowing down.
Yeah. He doesn't have endless cardio. Like, he really was feeling it, and I think those, he started feeling tired, and I think it became a bit exponential where he started, because his takedown defense was brilliant to start off with. Like, James would shoot in, and Abasov would get both arms underneath and just hoik him up. Like, there was no way he was going to get it. But as the fight went on and he got a bit slower, those shots would come in and he wouldn't be able to duck both arms underneath. And suddenly he couldn't go for it anymore. His cardio was running out. And there weren't a lot of shots, there weren't a lot of uppercuts later on in the fight that were making a lot of danger for James. I kind of wonder that if there had been, maybe he would have been a bit more on it and a bit more defensively sound and ready to defend those uppercuts and knees. But the fact that there was very little, and then that one came out of nowhere, I think it just caught him off guard.
Yeah. I also think that he got reckless. On the 4th round, James was he was still fresh. He was winning. He was winning the fight. I think if it's on the UFC scoring, he won the 2nd and 3rd. He was clearly running away with it.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see them run it back.
I think that'd be worth running it back, because maybe there's something that made Abasov have a not quite as good defense at the time, and not quite as good cardio, and that'd be good to run it back. And James, it'd be good to run it back because he was winning, and it'd be nice to know that. See, this is the thing. I mean, the knockouts and submissions make fights really exciting, but they also make you kind of think that sometimes the guy who was fighting worse still manages to win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what those losses are, the ones that hurt the most. Yeah. James was really winning, and then he got caught by just one knee, and then that's pretty much it. He actually managed to recover a little bit, but yeah, he lost his balance, and Abasov was Abasov landed. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see them run it back.
At first, I thought that was an early stoppage, but I replayed it earlier, and then I saw that James was unconscious.
He was out of it. Like, he was, the way he was sat on the floor when Abasov span around and almost sat on his shoulders, but James was just there.
Yeah.
He wasn't down on the ground. He wasn't sparked out, but he wasn't there. No, I thought it was a good stoppage, and that'd be cool to run it back. But that 100% comeback of the night, I mean, that was great.
I think that was Abasov's hardest fight of his career. That's the fight that he got the most damage, especially on his nose. During at that point where he got his nose broken, he really got in trouble. It all started from there. He had breathing problems. He had blood all over his body. Yeah.
Yeah, and that bit with his nose, I mean, he had a bit of a wonky nose anyway. Even in his fight picture, it's a little bit off center. But when I saw him sitting on the corner and I suddenly saw his nose, it gone from, okay, it starts off there, and then suddenly it was bent right round.
But the Cutman really did good. He was able to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
And it was then when James landed another punch that uh, made the bleeding again.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Cutman will stop it, but if it just gets tapped after that point, it'll all start going a bit wrong. And I agree that was probably one of his hardest matches ever. He took a lot of damage, and you could see his relief at the end. The fact that he'd managed to win it,
Yeah,
like he was really emotional.
he was down on his knees, like
He was
so
crying.
tired. Yeah,
I think he was crying at one point, down on his knees. Good on him for staying in there. Good on him for landing the hit. And he probably doesn't want to, but yeah, I'd like to see him fight James Nakashima again.
yeah. That was James' first loss. Uh,
Mm,
Psychologically, it will really hit him, but I think he'll come back stronger. Be more motivated, knowing that he was on his way to winning that fight to becoming champion, but
I
he's
agree. I
going to.
mean, I agree. I don't know who, I don't really know who he is. I don't know a lot about his personality, but it would be hard for me to foresee it really hitting him hard and him kind of giving up on things. He got that close. He knows he can do it. He knows he's good enough. Yeah, he'll get it one day. Just don't know exactly when.
Yeah. That division is also not that stacked, so I think that's the only fight to make next, the rematch.
Interesting. I'd have to have a look through it and see what there is. But yeah, that rematch, I'd watch it. Could be a little while till they do it again. I mean, Abasov's nose has got to heal up, and James has had a knockout, so I don't know how long his suspension will be.
And also uh the fighters that is ranked below them, they've already beaten them. So
Mm.
James will still be the number one contender despite the loss. Yeah.
Fair. I mean, that'd be good to see him run it back. All right. I think we should wrap it up there. I mean, what have we got coming up? We'll have some material for the next podcast,
Yeah.
for the next event coming up. Hopefully, we'll get a preview. We'll see what happens. Any closing thoughts? Anything we've not covered at the moment, and we want to finish off with?
Hmm, not really, but I would love to discuss the upcoming one inside the Magic 3, headlined by John Lineker and Kevin Bellingon. That match is interesting. I would love to see how John Lineker would go against that explosive, powerful striker in Kevin Bellingon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get that done in the week, and hopefully that'll be a bit more to pump out. So yeah, let's cut it off there. Cheers, mate.